Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Boston Devops Bill. My name is Bill Oliver, and this is my channel. So, last episode, we left with a real nail biter. I mean, people were, just really freaking out, staring at their set. There's no way this could be! But true enough, it was. We found us have one bug. What happened was that the last minute, it's always the infamous last minute of, let's switch out one thing for another. Well, I did it to myself. I switched out the Vagrant facility for defining shares for the VirtualBox facility for defining shares because I was playing around with it the other day and I thought that there was much better security than what the Vagrant share was offering us. Not that, really... Let's be honest, it's not, security is a big thing, but where we're just doing the development, it's our own system. We can be a little bit lax, but we don't want to be. So I thought beefing up the security was good. So one of the things which happened was we discovered that when you actually bring up the box, the share wasn't defined, so it started fine. Once we brought the box back down and then brought it back up again, we ran into a share definition error. In other words, the share was already defined. So that caused us a problem. So the situation is Vagrant throws an error on VM startup if we had defined if I used the workaround, which I did, which was define a removal of the share prior to defining it. That worked on, after the box was defined, but before the box was defined, it would cause an error. Either way, it impacted the way that, machines work, because even though we got one machine up successfully where we could go into this cycle of the share being defined, what happened was if you brought another machine up, it would crash because the remove was trying to remove something that wasn't there. So either way, we had this situation where my workaround, though it was clever, just didn't extend to what we needed it to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how the two products are intertwined, okay? On Vagrant on one hand, VirtualBox on the other. So because Vagrant calls into VirtualBox and VirtualBox is throwing the error, we're going to really look at how, VirtualBox defines the boxes and, more importantly, see if we couldn't find in a file that would identify, whether or not that share was defined or not defined. And I found just that. So by looking inside a VirtualBox, when we have these, product integration issues that we're building on top of, can really help us solve and get past some really complex issues, okay? And as long as we don't try to influence the product that we're having a problem with, we should be fine. In other words, we're not trying to go into VirtualBox and say, hey, I'm going to write inside of your control file this value. But we are going to look at that control file, which VirtualBox is writing itself, and it states right on top of the file, do not edit this, okay? But we're going to use that file because though we're not editing it, it does have state information about the VM box that we want to use. So we're going to use that in order to solve our problem. And of course, we're going to finish off the rest of our syncing of the IP addresses across all of our virtual hosts. And hopefully we won't run into any more problems. I promise I will not change the design in the middle of it again. I promise. Yeah, sure. Fingers crossed. Yeah. In any case, so we're going to define our systemd timer. We're going to define the service. We're going to write our update host shell script that's going to read our IP file and write our etc. host files for all of our VM machines. Okay, so we got a fun show. Hope you enjoy it. We got a fun show. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and go behind some keys, and maybe those buttons will do me better. All right, see you in a second. Okay, folks, let's pick it up where we left off, and let's pound some keys. I am in the build prod VBox preview file, or previous file, I'm not really sure. And this particular file was created by Vagrant, and it's holding the state of our current VM box. So we're going to use this to look in here, locate our shares, and for me, the share is right here, and it holds both my admin and my folder share. So we're going to look at this because this is specific just to this VM box. And I found the location of my VM storage. In case you don't know yours, I found my location simply by going into my VirtualBox console, going up underneath Virtual Media Manager, and clicking on it. And what I found was that here is my disk for the build prod virtual machine. So I'm simply going to grab this directory component, which is the first component with the drive letters and all that wonderful happy stuff. And I'm come over to my Vagrantfile, and I'm going to create a directory. Good. I'm doing good today. I'm going to create a variable, a constant, called VBbox store. Okay, so, and I'm going to change, as you can see, it's interpreting the V here, so we're going to change that to a /. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to access this file. We're going to build a way to access this file to determine the state of the share, and if it's defined in here, we're going to say that we don't need to create it in our VirtualBox. If it's not defined, then we are going to create it in our VirtualBox or using Vagrant. So this is what we're concerned about right here. This shared folder name admin. This is our searching pattern that we're going to search for. So I'm going to copy that also. And come back over here, and I'm going to create the VirtualBox extension variable, and this variable VBbox.prv ev is the name of our file. As you can see here, it ends in node name dot VBbox, VBbox hyphen preview. So what I didn't mean to, okay. I included the period in the extension, but right now, let's define a share, and let's call it share defined. Okay, and let me think. Let's pass this the node, or the node of the yeah, this is the node that we're creating. And then we have the shared the share name, and what we're going to do is we're going to use that search pattern oh, excuse me, sorry about that, allergies. So we have a shared folder name, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the actual name out but preserve the quoted location, and I'm going to use interpolation to put the share name in there. Okay, so now what we have is we have our searching pattern, and it's going to formulate exactly the way we expected it, exactly the way that VirtualBox is looking for or defining that share name. So let me create file, and what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if this file exists, because if the file doesn't exist, and the file which I'm talking about is this file here, if this file doesn't exist, then there was no previously defined no previously defined share names inside of the box. So we're going to define it. So if it does exist, then we're going to check it to see if it has our share name in it. So let's build the component. Okay. VBox store. And we're building the path to this file node, and the path to this file, it's going to require the node and the share name, and the node, node in the VBox extension. Okay. So this defines the path to our file name, which is the VBox store, followed by the node of the machine, followed by the node of the machine and the VBox extension. I think we're good there. So then we're going to do a file open. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing which we did down in our where do we do that? When we were writing out our IP, we're going to use the grep command. And we're going to define our pattern the same way using interpolation. Search pattern. And more importantly, we're going to check the size of the array being returned by our grep. And if it's greater than 0, great, we're done. Okay. But if right, And if not, we're going to return false. But the false condition which we return is just going to allow us to create the share. So the last, let me format this properly here. There we go. Okay. The way that functions work, or inside of Ruby, is that when we're using the definition block, we simply count on the return status to define, or the last value of the routine to define the return status code. We do not implicitly return that code. And so if the file exists and we go in and we search this file, what we want to do is we want to find either it exists or if it doesn't. And this is going to equate to a true or false value. So the return value of this is going to be true if it's defined and false if it isn't. If the file doesn't exist, then we're just going to return false. And that's a very simple condition for us. We can check this, and scrolling down the file to the section where we have our shared block, if we look at our customize directives inside that block, we can see where I had defined the remove. So I'm going to take this out because we don't need that anymore. And I'm going to say if not shared define, shared define, and we're going to pass it our node entry, and this is going to be our node, and we pass it our share name, if this evaluates to true, in this case, not being defined would be returned false from our function, but because we're negating it here, that false will become true and we'll actually define our share. So that's all we really need to do, and it guards us against both condition. If the share exists, it's going to come back. It's going to return true. True is not false, so we're not going to come in and define this share. So I think we're pretty good here. Let's go check it out. Okay, so the first thing which we're going to do is let's check to see. Let's check to see our status of the Vagrantfile. Okay, Vagrant's. Oh, should have ran a Vagrant verify, because it looks like I just can't spell. There we go. So let's do a quick Vagrant validate. Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do a Vagrant status. And okay, so they're both running, so let's bring both down. Vagrant halt That should bring him down. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run through a series of tests. And the first test which we're going to do is the one that failed on us the first time, which was the box is already defined. It's been provisioned. It's in a powered off state. And when we try to bring it up, we redefine that share and it complains about it. So let's go ahead and do a vagrant up of build prod. This is looking good so far. And about here it should die if we have a problem. And we don't. This is fantastic. Okay, so we just solved that problem, okay? And the problem, which we solved was if the machine was defined and we brought it up, we crashed. So just a short little video here just to, fix this Sev1 bug. And let's see, let's do this. Just to make sure that we can bring it all the way up now. So, let me see. This is going to be Vagrant status. Love that command. Okay, so let's do a Vagrant destroy. Let's force it, and let's call it test prod. And the reason why we're doing this is because now we're going to bring the whole thing up from scratch. And at this point, we are covering both of our criteria. One, a machine being up and running, and then being shut back down, and then brought back up without redefining the share. And the second one is we're verifying that we removed the statement, our share statement that we had in here, which was the remove statement to remove the shared file, the remove command right here. But so let's go ahead and let's verify that. Okay, let's just do a up of test prod. And while that's cooking, let's go ahead and confirm that we fixed this. And we'll do so. Yeah, we're getting a little cocky. Actually adding a comment before we do that. Okay. And no, today's the 14th. Today's the 14th. Okay. So let's go ahead and say fixed severity 1 issue with shares being defined. Okay. And we can come down here, and because we did our to-do, so regardless of whether or not it's working right, we can remove this to-do because if it isn't working right, it's now just a regular bug. Okay, so let's save that. Let's go back and see our progress. Okay, great, fantastic. So it looks like we solved it. We're covering both criterias. In existing machine that was up, that had a share defined. If we bring it back up to a running state, we find that the share name doesn't get redefined. It doesn't cause a crash. And we removed the remove statement to guard against the share being defined, or it being defined before we redefined it. So, and we ran into this problem on startup of a brand new box. And here we can see that we're already starting up. We're well into the process. So we fixed the problem that we caused ourselves by putting the remove statement in there to begin with. So just a fast little lecture on this. And in the next lecture, we're going to start doing the systemd. We're in define systemd. We're going to define a script to read the IP file and send it off to the host file. Okay, so I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.